The wind howled through the ridges of Blackridge Mountain, carrying with it the scent of pine, frost, and old stories that refused to die. For generations, locals had whispered about the Raven Mine, a hollow in the mountain where shadows moved on their own, and the air was said to hum with the voices of the lost. Few dared to venture near, and those who did never stayed long. But Sheila Johnson wasn't like most people. At 32, she'd already lived several lives. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Once a Denver accountant buried in spreadsheets and caffeine, she'd left that world behind after losing her father to illness and her job to corporate downsizing in the same month. When everything she knew collapsed, she loaded up her old truck, packed her dog Ranger, and drove until the skyline gave way to the mountains. That's when she saw the flyer. It was tacked crookedly on a dusty bulletin board outside a diner in Silver Pine. Property auction, abandoned mine lot, Blackridge County. Starting bid, $5. Sheila laughed when she read it. Who in their right mind would buy a haunted mine? But something about it, maybe the absurdity, maybe the mystery, called to her. She had only a few $100s left to her name. And though common sense said to keep it, something deeper whispered, "You need to see this place." So she did. The mine sat at the end of a narrow dirt road, half-eaten by moss and time. The old entrance was framed by rotted timbers, the metal sign above it faded but legible, Raven Mining Co. Eston 1872. The air was cold enough to sting her lungs. Ranger barked twice, circling the entrance, tail rigid but curious. "It's okay, boy," Sheila said, kneeling to scratch his ear. "We're just looking." When the auctioneer arrived, an older man in a brown hat who looked surprised anyone had come, there wasn't much ceremony. $5, Sheila said. "Sold," the man replied without even lifting his pen from the ledger. Sheila chuckled under her breath. $5. Less than a cup of coffee in her old life. Less than the gas it took to get here. And now, apparently, she owned a haunted mine. That night she camped near the entrance, her small tent pitched beside the truck. The stars above were so clear they looked close enough to touch, and the forest pulsed with the chirping of crickets and the low hum of distant wind. But beneath those sounds there was something else, a faint, rhythmic tap-tap-tap. Sheila sat up, listening. Ranger's ears perked. The sound came from within the mine, like metal striking stone. Then silence. Sheila frowned. Probably rock settling, she told herself, or the wind echoing through the tunnels. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone had been working deep underground. When morning came, Sheila set out to explore. She clipped a lantern to her belt, loaded a backpack with tools, and followed Ranger into the darkness. The tunnel smelled of wet earth and rust. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing off the stone. Old mining rails snaked along the floor, disappearing into deeper blackness. After 20 minutes, Sheila found an old cart, half buried in rubble. She brushed off the rusted edge and noticed faint markings carved into the rock beside it. Strange symbols, like a spiral crossed by two lines. "Not your average graffiti," she murmured. Ranger growled softly. "Easy, boy," Sheila said. "Just old markings." But as her flashlight beam flicked across the walls, it caught something else, a shape in the corner. A shadow that didn't move when she did. Her breath caught. The shape was human-sized, slouched forward like a miner resting on his pickaxe. But when she blinked, it was gone. The air grew colder. "Okay, that's enough exploring for today," she muttered, backing out slowly. Outside, sunlight felt like salvation. Sheila sat on the ground, exhaling shakily. Ranger whined and pressed close to her side. Sheila glanced back at the mine entrance. "What did we just walk into, Ranger?" Over the next few days, Sheila began cleaning the area, cutting weeds, repairing the small shed that once stored mining tools, and setting up a makeshift camp. Each night the tapping sound returned. Sometimes it came from deep below, other times from just beyond the tunnel mouth. Once she thought she heard faint whispering, too soft to understand. Still, something about the place held her. It was quiet, yes, and eerie, but it also felt alive, like the mountain itself was breathing, waiting. Then, on the fifth night, everything changed. Ranger began barking furiously at the mouth of the mine just after midnight. Sheila grabbed her flashlight and rushed out of her tent. "What is it, boy?" Ranger darted into the tunnel, tail high and ears alert. Sheila followed, heart pounding. The light from her torch flickered across the rough walls. That's when she noticed the ground, freshly disturbed soil near the old rail track, like something had been dug up recently. Ranger was pawing frantically at a narrow gap between two boulders. Sheila crouched beside him, shining the beam inside. Beneath the rock there was an opening, barely large enough for a person to crawl through. Sheila reached for her pickaxe and began widening it. Dust filled the air, and with a final shove, one of the stones rolled aside. A gust of cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of something metallic and ancient. When the dust settled, her flashlight revealed a hidden tunnel leading deeper into the mountain. Her heart thudded. "You found something, Ranger." The dog wagged his tail, barking twice as if to agree. Sheila crawled forward, her light cutting through the darkness. The tunnel walls glittered faintly, streaks of gold-colored veins catching the beam. She froze. It couldn't be. Gold. Real gold. Embedded in the rock like veins of fire. Her breath caught in her throat as she touched the wall. The surface flaked beneath her glove, and when she rubbed her fingers together, the shimmer was unmistakable. "Ranger," she whispered, stunned. "You just found us a fortune." But even as she said it, the tunnel filled with a low rumbling sound, like a sigh from the earth itself. The air grew colder again, and the light flickered once, twice, and from the darkness ahead came a voice, rough and distant, whispering, "You shouldn't have opened it." The echo of that voice, low, rough and heartbreakingly human, lingered in the tunnel long after it faded. Sheila froze, her fingers trembling on the flashlight. The beam wavered over the rough stone, illuminating only dust and darkness. Ranger stood rigid beside her, fur bristled, a growl rumbling deep in his chest. "Hello?" Sheila called, her voice unsteady. It bounced back off the tunnel walls, returning to her as a warped echo. "Is someone here?" Nothing. Only the slow, rhythmic drip of water and the faint rasp of the mountain breathing. She took a step backward, heart pounding. Her mind fought between logic and fear. She had heard someone, but how could anyone be inside a sealed shaft that hadn't been touched in decades? Ranger nudged her leg, whining softly. That broke her paralysis. "Come on, boy," she whispered, backing toward the entrance. "We're done for tonight." They emerged into the night, both shivering. The moon hung low over Blackridge, pale and watchful. Sheila zipped the tent flap tight, but she didn't sleep much. The voice echoed again and again in her mind. You shouldn't have opened it. By morning, the mountain looked innocent again. Sunlight spilled through the pines, scattering gold on the forest floor. Sheila brewed coffee on her camp stove and tried to convince herself that what she'd heard was her imagination. Echoes, acoustics, maybe even a trick of air pressure underground. But the more she thought about the tunnel and the veins of gold inside, the less she could ignore it. The mountain was old. Mines like these had swallowed hundreds of men in their time. Maybe the stories about ghosts weren't just ghost stories. They were memories that the earth hadn't yet let go of. Ranger sat beside her, head resting on her knee, watching her closely. "You really did find something," she murmured, rubbing his fur. "We just need to understand what it is." That afternoon, Sheila drove into Silverpine, the nearest town. The locals eyed her with curiosity when she walked into the small library. The librarian, an elderly woman with sharp blue eyes and a silver braid, looked up from her desk. "You're not from around here," she said. "No, ma'am," Sheila replied. "Name's Sheila Johnson. I bought the old Raven mine." The woman's expression faltered for a moment. "You bought that place?" "Yeah, for $5, Sheila said with a half-smile. "I guess I got a bargain." The librarian set down her pen. "Or a curse," Sheila hesitated. "You've heard the stories then." "Everyone around here has," the woman said. The mine was closed after the collapse of 1891. 37 men died inside, trapped after a dynamite blast sealed the lower shaft. Only 2 survivors made it out, and one of them claimed he heard voices calling from the dark, miners begging him to turn back. Voices. The librarian nodded solemnly. He said the gold they found down there was cursed, that the earth itself wanted to keep it buried. Sheila swallowed hard. Do you happen to have any records from that time? The woman led her to a back room filled with dusty boxes. Together, they sifted through yellowed newspaper clippings, mining ledgers, and hand-scribbled letters. In one ledger, Sheila found a page marked with a small black X beside the name Thomas Rayner, the mine foreman. Next to his name, someone had written in the margin, "He took the map. The mountain took him." Sheila stared at the words. The map? The librarian frowned. There were rumors that Rayner had discovered a second tunnel, the one that held the richest vein of gold. He sealed it off to claim it for himself, but before he could return, the explosion happened. A chill ran down Sheila's spine. A secret tunnel. The librarian met her gaze. If you found something that shouldn't have been found, Miss Johnson, you might want to leave it be. But Sheila couldn't. Back at the mine, the afternoon sun was sinking behind the ridge when she grabbed her tools and flashlight again. Ranger barked nervously, but she gave him a reassuring pat. Just a quick look. We'll stay close this time. The tunnel was colder than before, the air heavier. The rocks seemed to swallow sound. Sheila knelt near the narrow passage Ranger had uncovered. The glittering streak still shimmered faintly in her light. She chipped at the rock with her pickaxe, and the metallic clang echoed like a heartbeat. With every strike, more gold glimmered through the dust. But after the 4th swing, something changed. The light flickered, and a low whisper filled the air. Not one voice this time. Many, faint, overlapping, mournful. "Turn back." "Not yours." "We warned him too." Ranger barked and backed up, tail between his legs. Sheila's hand shook, the pickaxe slipping from her fingers. Her breath turned visible in the cold air. Then the beam of her flashlight caught something on the wall, a shape burned into the rock itself, a handprint, charred black, as if someone had pressed their palm against molten stone. She reached toward it before realizing what she was doing, then stopped. The air near it pulsed with heat, though the tunnel was freezing. A shudder ran through her. "What are you?" The voices fell silent. Only Ranger's whimper filled the darkness. Then, without warning, the ground beneath her cracked, the rocks shifted with a deep groan, and a small section of the tunnel wall caved inward, revealing a hollow behind it. Sheila stumbled back, coughing in the dust. When it cleared, she saw it, a small wooden chest half buried in the debris. The wood was rotted, but the metal latch still gleamed faintly under her light. She approached it slowly, every nerve alive. "It's okay, Ranger. It's just a box." Her fingers brushed the latch. It gave way with a soft click. Inside, wrapped in a strip of ancient leather, were several gold nuggets, thick, uncut, gleaming like trapped sunlight. Sheila gasped. "Ranger, do you see this? This is real gold." But as she lifted one of the nuggets, the voices returned, fainter now but furious. "Thief! Return what's ours." "He took it first." The tunnel seemed to shake with their anger. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a sound like footsteps echoed behind her. Sheila slammed the lid shut, heart racing. "We're leaving." Ranger bolted ahead, barking wildly. Sheila ran after him, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly against the rock walls. The air felt thick, pressing against her back like invisible hands. When they burst into daylight, Sheila collapsed beside the entrance, gasping for breath. Ranger stood guard, eyes fixed on the darkness. The mine was silent again. Sheila looked down at her trembling hands. One of the gold nuggets had slipped into her pocket during the chaos. She held it up to the light. It glowed warm in her palm. Too warm. Then for just a heartbeat she saw a reflection in its surface. Not her face, someone else's. A man in a miner's helmet, eyes hollow, staring straight at her. Sheila dropped the nugget with a cry. It landed in the dirt, glittering like a warning. The whisper came again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Bury it back, before it's too late." The gold nugget lay in the dirt like a tiny sun, beautiful, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. Sheila stared at it for a long time, torn between fear and fascination. The voice's warning still rang in her head. Bury it back, before it's too late. Ranger nudged her leg, whining softly, urging her to leave it alone. But Sheila couldn't. She grabbed a clean rag, wrapped the nugget tightly, and tucked it into her backpack. Just for testing, she muttered. To know if it's real, she didn't believe in ghosts. Not really, but something about that mine was undeniably alive. The next morning, she drove back into Silverpine with the wrapped nugget in her bag. The sun was out, the town alive with chatter and the clink of tools from a nearby mechanic's shop. Life felt normal again, almost. She parked outside the general store where a sign read, "We buy and test gold, honest prices." The owner, a burly man named Hank, greeted her with a nod. "What can I do for you, miss?" Sheila hesitated. "I found something near the old Raven mine." At that, Hank's brow furrowed. "That haunted hole up in the ridge?" "Yeah," Sheila said with a nervous laugh. "I bought it. You bought it." He whistled low. "You got guts, lady. Folks say that place eats people. I just need you to test this." Sheila unwrapped the rag and revealed the nugget. Hank's eyes widened. He picked it up, turning it over in his hand. "Well, I'll be damned. This is the purest mountain gold I've seen in years. You strike a vein." "Maybe," Sheila said cautiously. "But I didn't find it in an active shaft. More like an old sealed tunnel." Hank frowned. "Raven was closed in 1891. If you found gold that old, someone hid it. Or died trying to." He placed the nugget on the counter. "This here's worth about $30,000, give or take." Sheila blinked. 30, what? "Yep, maybe more, depending on purity. If there's more where this came from, you're sitting on a fortune. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. Her stomach flipped. A fortune. Enough to rebuild her life, maybe even help others in this dying mountain town. But she also remembered the handprint on the stone wall, the whispers, the sudden quake. "What if the gold is cursed?" she said softly. Hank chuckled. "Lady, gold ain't cursed. People are." Maybe he was right. Maybe the ghosts were only echoes of guilt. Miners who died chasing greed. But the fear in her gut wouldn't go away. Back at camp, Sheila couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. The forest seemed quieter than usual. Even the birds avoided the ridge. She built a small fire, trying to push away the unease, and sat with Ranger sipping soup from a tin mug. The night air was cool, and the stars burned sharp overhead. Then she heard it again. The tap, tap, tap. It was faint, but rhythmic, echoing from deep inside the mine. She froze. "No," she whispered. "Not again," Ranger growled, ears flat. The sound grew louder, closer, like someone working a pick against stone. Sheila grabbed her flashlight and crept toward the tunnel mouth. The air turned icy, her breath visible in the beam. "Who's there?" she called. A faint voice drifted out, cracked and weary. "Help me." Her blood ran cold. "What?" "Help me, Raynor." "Trapped, Raynor." The name from the ledger. She took one trembling step forward. The beam of her flashlight caught a shape in the darkness, a shadowed figure slumped against the wall, head bowed, helmet glinting faintly. Her breath hitched. "Thomas Raynor." The figure lifted its head. The eyes, empty sockets glowing faintly gold, met hers. Then the light flickered out. She screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over a rock. Ranger barked wildly, teeth bared, pulling at her jacket until she scrambled back into the open night. When she dared to look again, the tunnel was empty. Sleep was impossible after that. Sheila sat by the dying fire, staring at the mine, the wrapped nugget sitting beside her like a taunt. "What do you want from me?" she whispered into the night. The mountain gave no answer. Only the wind stirred, carrying faint echoes that could have been words or just her imagination. By dawn, she'd made up her mind. If the spirit of Thomas Raynor was still trapped down there, maybe he wanted something returned. Maybe that gold belonged to him. so she packed her gear and headed back into Silverpine to find answers. The library smelled of old paper and secrets. The librarian, Mrs. Dawes, looked surprised to see her again so soon. "Couldn't stay away, could you?" "I found something," Sheila said quietly, "and I saw someone." "I think it was Thomas Rayner." Mrs. Dawes went pale. "You saw him?" "In the mine. He said he was trapped." The librarian led her to a dusty cabinet in the corner. "There's one thing you should see." She unlocked a drawer and pulled out a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked with age. "This was found near the site 20 years ago. Belonged to Rayner himself." Sheila's hands shook as she opened it. The pages were filled with cramped handwriting, half faded. One passage caught her eye. "I sealed the second shaft today. The men cannot know what lies beyond. The gold is too pure to alive. It hums when you touch it. The mountain watches. I fear what we've awakened." She turned another page. "If I do not return, whoever finds this, bury the gold. The voices will not stop. They are not of this world." The entry ended abruptly, mid-sentence, the ink smeared as though by trembling hands. Sheila stared at the words. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "What happened to him?" She whispered. Mrs. Dawes sighed. "They never found his body. Some say he went back in after the cave-in to rescue his men. Others say the mountain took him." Sheila closed the journal, her decision firming like steel. "Then I'll find him, or whatever's left." Back at the mine, clouds rolled in, heavy and grey. Thunder rumbled over the peaks. Sheila strapped on her headlamp and grabbed her tools. Ranger whined, pawing at her knee. "I know, boy," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "But we have to end this. Whatever's down there, it's waiting for us." The wind whipped through the trees as she stepped into the darkness, down past the broken rail tracks, past the handprint burned into stone. The air shimmered faintly, and the whispering began again, softer this time, guiding her deeper. She turned a corner and froze. There, carved crudely into the rock, was a map, a spiral of tunnels leading to a marked X. Next to it, scrawled in the same rough hand as the ledger note, were the words, "The heart of the mountain." Lightning flashed somewhere above, and the entire tunnel seemed to tremble. Sheila's voice shook as she whispered to Ranger, "I think we just found the miner's map." And deep in the mountain, something old and unseen stirred awake. The carving on the rock seemed to pulse faintly under Sheila's light, crude lines forming a spiral, an X marked at the center like a wound. She traced the symbol with her fingertips. The surface was smooth, unnaturally so, as if time itself had been burned away. "The heart of the mountain," she whispered. Ranger whined, his tail low. His eyes darted toward the tunnel beyond, where the air shimmered like heat rising from desert sand. "I know, boy," Sheila murmured, "but we've come this far." She snapped a glow stick and tossed it forward. It landed softly on the rocky floor, casting a faint green glow down the passage. The tunnel sloped downward at a steep angle. Somewhere below, a faint hum resonated, low, steady, like the drone of something alive. Every instinct told her to turn back. But the memory of Rayner's journal and the trapped souls of the miners drove her forward. The descent was grueling. The air grew denser, colder. The walls narrowed until Sheila had to crouch, her knees scraping stone. Ranger padded behind her, panting softly. Every few yards she saw old mining tools, rusted picks, shattered helmets, half-buried lamps. The deeper she went, the more time seemed to lose meaning. Finally, the tunnel widened into a chamber. She stood slowly, brushing dust off her jeans, and shone her flashlight around. Her breath caught. The walls glimmered with streaks of gold, thicker and richer than any she'd seen before. They pulsed faintly in the light, as if veins of molten sunlight ran beneath the surface. In the center of the chamber stood an ancient wooden cart, half filled with rocks and gold nuggets. The ground around it was scorched black. "What is this place?" she breathed. Ranger growled low in his throat. His hackles raised. Then, from the shadows near the far wall, a faint shape began to form. It was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a miner's helmet and tattered clothes. His face was pale, his eyes faintly glowing gold. Sheila's heart slammed in her chest. Thomas Rayner! The ghostly figure inclined his head slightly, his mouth moving as though forming words. Though the sound came as a whisper in her mind. You shouldn't have come. I just want to understand, Sheila said, her voice shaking. Why are you still here? What is this gold? Rayner's eyes darkened. It's not gold. It's the mountain's blood. We took too much. We woke it. The mountain, it breathes. It remembers. Every vein we cut made it bleed. Every ounce we took made it angry. The air shimmered again, the hum growing louder, vibrating through Sheila's bones. Dust drifted from the ceiling like ash. Rayner stepped closer, the air around him cold enough to sting her skin. You found the heart, but you can still stop it. How? Return what was taken. Seal the tunnel. Leave the rest buried. Sheila swallowed hard. And if I don't? Rayner's expression twisted, his voice echoing like a storm. Then the mountain will take you too. The light flickered, and suddenly the chamber was filled with whispers. Dozens of voices overlapping, mournful and furious. Ranger barked wildly as stones began to tremble loose from the ceiling. Okay, I'll go, Sheila shouted, grabbing Ranger's collar. We're leaving! But as she turned toward the tunnel, her flashlight caught something, half buried near the cart. A small, leather-bound book, its cover blackened by soot. Rayner's voice faded into a faint whisper. My map, take it. Finish what I couldn't. The air exploded with a violent gust of wind, sending rocks clattering. Sheila snatched the book and bolted, dragging Ranger up the slope. The hum rose into a roar, the gold veins glowing brighter until the tunnel walls looked like fire. She barely made it out before the entrance collapsed behind her in a thunderous crash. For several long minutes, she and Ranger sat gasping in the dirt, staring at the now sealed passage. The air was thick with dust and silence. Okay, she panted, clutching the book to her chest. Okay, Rayner, I have your map. I'll finish this. Back at camp, the storm broke over the mountain. Rain hammered her tent, lightning flashing through the trees. She sat by her lantern, flipping through the burnt pages of Rayner's second journal. Most of the writing was smudged, but one line stood out, written in a heavier hand than the rest. The gold was not forged in this earth. It came from the fire beneath. When we dug deep enough, we found something sleeping. Beneath the line was a sketch, an oval chamber, the same one she'd just been in, with a dark pit drawn in the center. From it radiated jagged lines that looked like tendrils or roots. Sheila rubbed her temple. Sleeping. What does that mean? Ranger whimpered beside her. She looked down and froze. The wrapped nugget, the one she'd brought to town, was glowing faintly through the cloth. A soft, golden pulse, perfectly in rhythm with her heartbeat. Not good, she whispered. She reached for it and hissed as it burned her fingers. The glow flared, and for a split second she saw something in her mind, molten gold coursing through black rock, vases screaming silently from the veins, and at the center a massive, glowing shape curled like a sleeping beast. She dropped the nugget and staggered back. No, outside thunder cracked. The ground shuddered beneath her feet. The mountain was moving. Ranger barked wildly, his fur standing on end. The air smelled of sulfur and smoke. Sheila grabbed her pack and flashlight. We're leaving, now. But as she reached for the tent flap, a sound froze her in place, faint at first, then rising. It was the tapping again. Only this time it wasn't coming from the mine. It was coming from underneath her tent. She yanked the flap open and backed into the storm. The ground beneath her quivered. A thin crack split through the earth, glowing faintly gold. Ranger barked at it, teeth bared, as the hum from the mountain turned deafening. Then, through the roar of wind and rain, Sheila heard Rayner's voice one last time. The mountain is waking. Run while you still can. Sheila grabbed Ranger and sprinted toward her truck. Behind her, the ground split wider, and a beam of golden light shot into the stormy sky, illuminating the ridge like dawn. The mountain wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it was angry. The night exploded with light and thunder. Gold lightning flashed across the sky as the ridge shook beneath Sheila's boots. Trees bent under roaring wind. Dust and pine needles spun like storm debris. Ranger barked, frantic, as Sheila wrestled the truck door open. "Come on, boy! Inside!" she shouted, shoving him onto the passenger seat. The truck roared to life just as a fissure cracked open across the dirt road. Glowing veins of gold pulsed inside it, radiating heat that made the air shimmer. Sheila slammed the gas pedal. Tires spun, gravel sprayed, and the truck fishtailed up the road. Behind her, the mountain rumbled like a creature stirring from a long sleep. Rocks tumbled from the slopes. Trees split at their roots. The mine entrance, her $5 purchase, collapsed entirely, swallowed by a burst of molten light. Sheila gripped the wheel hard, her knuckles white. "Hold on, Ranger!" They tore down the winding road toward Silverpine. Every turn revealed more signs of the disturbance. Cracks in the ground, flickering streetlights, terrified deer bolting through the trees. By the time she reached town, the rain had turned to a golden mist that glowed faintly in the headlights. People were spilling out of buildings, pointing toward the ridge. "Oh my God," someone gasped. "The mountain's on fire!" But it wasn't fire, it was gold. Rivers of molten gold streaked down the slopes like veins of liquid sun. Sheila parked in front of the diner and stumbled out, soaked and trembling. Ranger followed, pressing close to her leg. The townsfolk stared as she approached, her clothes streaked with dirt and ash. "Miss Johnson?" Hank, the store owner, stepped forward. "What happened up there?" Sheila swallowed hard. "The mine, it's waking up. The gold, it's not just metal. It's alive." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Alive?" Someone scoffed. "What are you talking about?" Sheila fumbled in her pack and pulled out the scorched journal. The miners knew. They found something deep in the tunnels, something that wasn't supposed to be touched. They called it the heart of the mountain. Hank's eyes narrowed. "And you opened it," she nodded. "I think I set it free." An hour later, the town's small community center was packed. Power was flickering, and the air smelled faintly metallic like lightning and coin. Sheila stood at the front with Mrs. Dawes, the librarian, and Hank. "Listen," she said, raising her voice over the rising panic. "I know how this sounds, but you've all seen what's happening out there. The gold veins are spreading, cracking the ground, heating it. If it keeps going, it'll take the whole mountain." "Maybe the town," a miner from the back shouted. "Then what do we do?" "You said it's alive. How do you stop rock from moving?" Mrs. Dawes held up the journal. According to Rayner's notes, the miners used explosives to seal the deepest chamber, the one they called the heart. But they didn't just collapse it. They left offerings, iron, salt, and blood. "Blood," someone whispered. Sheila nodded grimly. "They thought the mountain fed on greed. It woke when people took what wasn't theirs. So they gave something back." Hank crossed his arms. "You're saying this is some kind of—" "Curse, not a curse," Sheila said. "A reaction. We woke something that wants balance." A long silence filled the room. Rain pattered against the windows, and faint rumbles echoed from the ridge. Then Mrs. Dawes said quietly, "If Rayner couldn't finish it, maybe you can." Sheila looked at her, startled. "Me? You're the one it spoke to," Mrs. Dawes said. "You found the map. Maybe the mountain chose you." Ranger whined beside her, sensing her fear. She looked out the window toward the glowing ridge. The sky above it pulsed faintly gold, the light breathing like a heartbeat. "Then I guess I have to finish what he started," she said softly. By dawn, the rain had stopped, but the mountain still glowed faintly. Sheila packed supplies into the truck, rope, water, food, tools, and the miner's map. Ranger jumped in beside her without hesitation. "You sure about this?" Hank asked, leaning on the window frame. His face was drawn, his usual bravado gone. "No," Sheila admitted. "But if I don't try, we lose everything." He handed her a bundle of dynamite wrapped in oilcloth. "If you're going to seal something, you'll need this." "Old stock, but it'll do." She took it with a nod. "Thanks," he hesitated. "Sheila, be careful. I've seen mines collapse before, but this ain't natural." She smiled faintly. "Neither am I anymore." The drive up the ridge was eerily quiet. The forest was coated in a thin layer of dust that shimmered gold in the sunlight. Birds were gone. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Sheila parked near the collapsed entrance and stared at what remained of her $5 mine. The ground was cracked open like a scar, and the faint hum still vibrated underfoot. She took a deep breath. "Ready, Ranger?" The dog wagged his tail once, resolute. They began digging. It took hours to move enough rock to reveal the tunnel again. As she worked, Sheila could feel the vibration growing stronger, like the mountain's pulse was syncing with her own. Finally, the passage opened, a dark throat leading down into the earth. She strapped on her headlamp, pocketed the wrapped nugget, and stepped inside. The air was thicker now, heavy with heat and a metallic tang. The gold veins along the walls pulsed faster, the light almost heart-like. As she descended, the whispers began again, faint, urgent. "Turn back. It feeds. Seal it before the light consumes." She clenched her jaw and pressed on. The tunnel widened into the same chamber she'd seen before. The cart, the blackened rock, the scorched floor. But now, at its center, a fissure had opened, glowing like molten glass. She knelt beside it, the dynamite in hand. "Rainer, if you can hear me, guide me." The air shimmered. The faint outline of the ghost miner appeared across from her, his eyes sorrowful. "You came back. I said I'd finish what you started." "You must give it back," Rainer whispered. "All of it, including what it took from you," Sheila frowned. "What do you mean?" But before he could answer, the fissure widened. A blast of heat knocked her backward. The wrapped nugget flew from her pack, landing near the crack. It pulsed violently, brighter than before. Ranger barked and lunged forward, teeth gripping the cloth, trying to drag it away. "Ranger, no!" Sheila shouted, scrambling to her feet. But the gold flared like a flash of lightning, engulfing the dog in blinding light. When it faded, Ranger was gone. Only his collar lay near the fissure, glowing faintly gold. Sheila fell to her knees, a cry tearing from her throat. "No, no, please, Ranger!" The ghost of Rainer closed his eyes. "The mountain takes what it's owed." Sheila's tears mixed with dust as she whispered. "Then it can take me too." She lit the dynamite fuse. The world erupted in gold and fire. The explosion shook the ridge, sending birds scattering for miles. Flames curled upward, then vanished as a shockwave of golden light rippled through the trees. When the smoke cleared, the mine was gone. The hum had stopped. The mountain was still. In the distance, Silver Pine's townsfolk watched as the golden glow faded into the dawn. And on the ridge, where the mine once breathed, a single figure staggered from the rubble, covered in ash. Her clothes torn but alive, Sheila collapsed to her knees, clutching Ranger's collar to her chest. The mountain was quiet again, but in the silence, deep beneath the earth, something ancient stirred once more, just faintly, like the last echo of a heartbeat. The morning sun rose over the ridge, painting the mountain gold, but it was a dull, natural light this time. No more pulsing veins, no molten glow, just silence. Sheila sat by the remains of her truck, wrapped in a blanket someone had draped over her shoulders. Her skin was streaked with soot. Her hair was matted with ash and sweat. Ranger's collar sat heavy in her palm, its tag blackened. Hank crouched beside her, his face carved with worry. "You shouldn't have gone back alone." "I had to," Sheila murmured. Her voice was hoarse. "It's done. The mine's sealed. The gold's gone." He glanced toward the smoking ridge. "And the dog?" Sheila's throat tightened. "The mountain took him." No one spoke after that. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. They drove her back to town in silence. When they arrived, the townsfolk gathered quietly. The same people who had watched her leave the night before now looked at her with something between awe and fear. Mrs. Dawes approached slowly, holding a thermos of tea. "You did it, dear." The shaking stopped hours ago. The whole mountain went quiet. Sheila nodded numbly, accepting the tea but not drinking it. "The legend will end with you," Mrs. Dawes said softly. "No one will touch that land again." Sheila stared into the distance. "That's the problem. The mountain doesn't forget." That night she couldn't sleep. The cabin walls creaked. The rain returned, tapping softly against the roof. She sat at the small wooden table, turning Ranger's collar over in her hands. The metal tag caught the lamplight, and for just a second, it shimmered faintly gold. She froze. "No," she whispered. The shimmer faded as quickly as it came. She rubbed her eyes, exhaustion weighing on her. She stood to pour a cup of water. And that's when she heard it, a faint scratch at the door. Her breath caught. "Ranger!" The scratching came again, followed by a low, familiar whine. She ran to the door and flung it open, and froze. There was nothing there, only the mist curling off the mountain. But in the mud just outside the porch steps were paw prints, fresh. Sheila stumbled backward, clutching the doorframe. No, it can't be. The prints led toward the woods, glowing faintly gold in the dark. By morning, Sheila was gone. She left her cabin just before dawn, following the tracks. Her pack was light: rope, flashlight, journal, a small pistol. Ranger's collar hung from her belt. The prints wound through the pine forest, across dry creek beds, and through tall grass, until they reached a narrow ravine she hadn't seen before. The air was cold there, unnaturally cold. She crouched near the edge. Below, half hidden by fallen branches, was a small cave opening. It glowed faintly. Sheila's heart pounded. No way! She descended carefully, each footstep deliberate. The closer she got, the more she could hear it. The faint hum she'd thought she'd silenced forever. It wasn't gone. It had moved. She ducked into the cave, flashlight cutting through the shadows. The gold veins ran through the walls like veins of fire under glass. And then she saw him. At least, she thought she did. A dog-shaped silhouette stood deeper in the tunnel, its eyes glowing softly gold. Ranger? It wagged its tail once, almost shyly. Tears blurred her vision. You're alive! But when she stepped forward, the dog turned and vanished into the wall. The gold shimmered like water where it had been. She pressed her hand against the spot, and it sank through. The world on the other side wasn't the mountain she knew. It was a cavern, vast and shimmering, stretching beyond sight. Rivers of gold ran through stone like molten blood, and faint shapes moved within the light. Miners, spirits, shadows. Sheila gasped. The heart! The ghostly voice of Raina echoed faintly. You sealed the wound, but not the soul. The mountain keeps what it loves. She turned, eyes searching. Ranger! The golden dog appeared again, padding toward her from the far end of the cavern. But this time, when she reached out, her hand didn't pass through him. She felt warmth, fur, breath, life. Her knees buckled. Oh God, Ranger! You're back. But even as she embraced him, she could see it, veins of gold running under his fur, pulsing softly. He was not fully alive, not fully gone. Raina's voice murmured again. You took the heart from the earth. Now the earth takes a heart in return, Sheila whispered. What do you want me to do? The cavern pulsed. The golden veins glowed brighter. Then, from deep below, she heard it, the faint clinking of metal, coins, chains, a sound like wealth whispering her name. Ranger growled softly, ears flattening. The whispering grew louder. 5 million in gold. Yours if you stay. Sheila's flashlight flickered. Her pulse thundered. She looked down and saw it. A narrow tunnel, newly formed, leading deeper still. Gold dust drifted out of it like breath. By the time she climbed out of the ravine, night had fallen again. Her pack was heavier now, filled with nuggets. Raw and unrefined, she walked back to the truck in silence, her boots crunching over pine needles. When she reached the driver's seat, she hesitated, then looked back toward the glowing cave. Ranger stood beside her, eyes faintly luminescent. Sheila whispered, We'll make it right. Whatever it takes. The dog tilted his head. Sheila started the engine. As they drove down the mountain, the radio crackled to life, though it had been dead for years. A man's voice whispered through the static, The gold never sleeps. Sheila! The engine sputtered, and in her rearview mirror she saw it. The mountain pulsed once, golden light flickering beneath the earth. It wasn't done with her, not yet. The town of Silverpine returned to its uneasy quiet, but Sheila Johnson couldn't rest. It had been 3 nights since she followed Ranger's glowing tracks into the ravine. 3 nights since she'd seen the rivers of living gold and brought a sack of it back down from the mountain. She'd buried most of it behind her cabin, hidden under loose soil and a tarp, but even underground she could still feel it. When the wind blew from the north, it carried a faint metallic hum. When she closed her eyes, she could hear the whispering again. 5 million in gold. Yours if you stay? Ranger would growl softly every time she drifted too close to the back door where the gold was buried. The glow under his fur had faded, but sometimes, in moonlight, she could still see it, a heartbeat of light under his ribs. "Don't worry, boy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "I'm not touching it again." But the gold didn't care about promises. On the 4th morning, Sheila drove down to town for supplies. At the general store, people still whispered when she walked in. Some nodded respectfully. Others looked away, uneasy. "Morning, Miss Johnson," Hank said, stacking crates of flour behind the counter. "You're looking better." Sheila gave a thin smile. "Trying to get back to normal." "Normal ain't what it used to be," Hank muttered. "You seen the ridge lately? Stream water's got gold flecks in it. Fish are dying. Ground's hot to the touch." She froze. "It's spreading again?" He shrugged. "Not sure. Could just be runoff," but he hesitated, glancing toward the door. "Couple of prospectors came by last night. Said they saw light in the trees near your place." Sheila felt the air go cold. "Light?" "Gold light." She left her groceries and drove home fast. By the time she reached the cabin, dusk had fallen. The sky was violet, the trees black silhouettes. As she climbed out of the truck, Ranger stiffened, ears high, growling low in his throat. She followed his gaze. At the tree line, faint golden shapes flickered between the trunks, moving, pulsing, drifting like ghosts. She grabbed the flashlight from her belt and flicked it on. The beam cut across the clearing, and she saw them clearly this time. Men, or what had once been men, their skin shimmered like gold leaf, cracked and glowing from within. Their eyes burned like molten coins, and when they turned their heads toward her, she recognized them, the miners from Rayner's journal. Sheila stumbled backward, heart hammering. "No, I sealed the mine. You can't be here!" The first of them spoke, voice deep and echoing like stone grinding on metal. "You opened the heart. You carry its hunger," Ranger barked, stepping between her and the figures. "What do you want?" Sheila shouted. Another spoke. "Return what you took, or the mountain will reclaim it in blood." And then, just like that, the figures vanished. The clearing went silent. Sheila stood frozen, her flashlight trembling in her hand. She turned slowly toward the back of the cabin, where the buried gold lay. The soil was glowing faintly. She whispered, "Oh no." She spent the rest of the night digging. By the time the moon reached its peak, she'd uncovered the top, and what she saw made her stomach turn. The gold wasn't still. It pulsed. Each nugget throbbed faintly like a heart. The soil around it steamed, and the air reeked of sulfur. Ranger growled, his eyes flicking between her and the pit. "I'm going to end this," she muttered. "All of it." She fetched the old dynamite Hank had given her and began loading it into the pit. But when she struck a match, the flame sputtered out. The air was too thick, too charged. She heard it again at the whisper, "Stay." "It's yours." 5 million in gold. Enough to start again. Her hands trembled. The whisper turned smoother, softer, familiar. It was her own voice now. "You lost everything once, Sheila. Your husband. Your home. You can't lose again." Tears filled her eyes. "Stop it! You deserve this!" She pressed her hands to her ears. "Stop!" Ranger barked, snapping her back to herself. The dynamite fuse flickered, and before she could think, she threw it into the pit. The explosion shook the clearing, sending dirt and light flying. A wave of heat knocked her to the ground. When the smoke cleared, the hole was gone, sealed over by blackened rock. The light had vanished. Sheila lay on her back, gasping, stars wheeling above her. Ranger limped to her side, licking her face. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." But as she reached to hug him, her hand brushed his collar, and it burned her skin. She jerked back with a cry. The collar's tag glowed gold again, brighter than ever. Ranger whined, stepping back. His eyes flickered, gold, then brown, then gold again. Sheila's stomach turned cold. "Oh God, what's happening to you?" Ranger barked once, sharp, and ran toward the woods. "Ranger, come back!" But he was gone. swallowed by the trees and the whispering dark. For 3 days, Sheila searched the forest. She found no tracks, no fur, nothing but faint golden dust where he'd stood last. She barely ate, barely slept. The townspeople stopped asking questions. They knew she'd gone half feral up there, chasing something the mountain had already claimed. On the 4th night, a knock came at her cabin door. She opened it to find Mrs. Dawes, clutching a newspaper. "Sheila," she said quietly, "you need to see this." The front page headline read, "Gold Rush returns to Silverpine Ridge. Survey team finds 5 molars in untapped veins." Sheila's heart stopped. "No," she whispered. Mrs. Dawes' eyes were wide and fearful. "They're planning to reopen the mine next week." Sheila's hands trembled. She looked past the librarian toward the dark line of the ridge. In the distance, faint golden light shimmered just above the trees. The mountain was waking again. By the end of the week, Silverpine wasn't quiet anymore. The news spread faster than wildfire. 5 million in untapped gold, ancient mine rediscovered, a fortune waiting to be dug. Pickups rolled into town from neighboring states. Men in dusty jeans and hard hats crowded the diner, laughing, trading maps, planning to strike it rich. Reporters followed close behind, sniffing for a headline. And through it all, Sheila watched from her cabin window, silent. She'd been the one who'd woken the mountain. She'd sealed it, burned it, and watched it stir again. The gold didn't sleep, it called. And now, it had new voices to answer. The first night, the prospectors set up camp near the old ridge. The mountain lights returned. Sheila saw them from her porch, golden threads weaving through the forest, flickering like veins under skin. Ranger's collar still lay on her table, glowing faintly. Every time the light from the ridge pulsed, the collar pulsed with it. As if the mountain's heart still beat through that small piece of metal, she picked it up, whispering, "What are you trying to tell me, boy?" No answer came, only the wind and the faint, faraway sound of drills biting into rock. The next day, she drove into town. "Morning, Miss Johnson," Hank greeted uneasily as she walked into the store. "You heard about the excavation team?" Sheila nodded. "I heard, and I came to warn them," he frowned. "Warn them about what?" She leaned closer. "That gold isn't just gold, Hank, it's alive. You saw what happened when I touched it, what it did to the mountain." He crossed his arms. "That's a hard story to sell to folks who just smelled a payday." "Then I'll show them," she said flatly. The excavation camp sprawled across the ridge like a scar. Tents, generators, metal detectors, and floodlights humming under the dusk. Sheila parked just outside the perimeter. Her boots sank into soft soil as she walked toward the foreman's tent. "Hey!" a guard shouted. "This site's restricted." "I'm Sheila Johnson," she said. "This land used to be mine," the man frowned. "Used to be?" "I bought it for $5, she said simply, "and buried what almost destroyed this whole valley. You dig here, you'll unleash it again." The guard chuckled. "Lady, we're not here for ghost stories." "I'm not joking." Her voice was steel. "The last people who mined here vanished." "You'll end up the same." A deeper voice interrupted. "That'll do, Miller." The foreman stepped out, tall, grey-bearded, with sharp eyes that spoke of years underground. His name tag read Cole Draven. "Sheila Johnson," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Heard about you." "Local legend," she didn't smile. "Not a legend." "A warning." Draven looked amused. "And what exactly are you warning me about?" "The gold," she said. "It's not natural. It feeds on greed. Every time someone tries to take it, the mountain fights back." He raised an eyebrow. "Lady, I've been mining for 30 years. Rocks don't fight back. You'll see," she murmured. Draven's grin hardened. "Then we'll take our chances. I've got contracts, investors, and a schedule." "You're trespassing now, Miss Johnson." She studied him for a long moment, then said quietly, "When the mountain wakes. Remember I warned you," and she left. That night, the storm began. It started with the sound, a low hum that vibrated through the trees. Then came the light. Sheila stood on her porch, watching as the ridge erupted in golden fire. Bolts of light shot from the ground, twisting through the clouds. The camp lights flickered, then went dark. From miles away, She could hear shouting, men screaming, machines exploding, then silence, and when the silence ended, it was replaced by whispers. The gold belongs to no one. The heart remembers. Return what you took. Ranger's collar began to glow again, so bright she had to set it down. The glow pulsed faster and faster until it burst. A beam of light shot upward, forming a faint image in the smoke, a dog-shaped tail wagging. Ranger, she whispered. The golden form turned, looking toward the mountain. Sheila felt it in her chest, a pull, deep and urgent. He was calling her back. By dawn, Sheila was climbing the ridge again. The air was thick with heat and dust. Smoke rose from the miners' camp, and what was left of it. The ground was scorched. Machinery lay melted, twisted like wax. No bodies, no footprints. Only gold dust drifting through the air like pollen. She picked up a handful. It was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Ranger appeared again, not solid but glowing, translucent. He trotted ahead of her, tail low, pausing every few steps to make sure she followed. Sheila's voice broke. "I'm here, boy. Lead the way." He led her past the collapsed tunnels, deeper into the forest, toward the ravine where the new cave had opened. When she reached it, she saw something new, a narrow stone arch at the entrance, etched with symbols that pulsed gold. Ranger passed through the arch and vanished. Sheila took a deep breath. All right. Once more into the dark. Inside, the cave had changed again. The walls shimmered with life, gold flowing like liquid through veins of rock. The air hummed heavy with power, and at the center stood a figure, human in shape, but made entirely of light and molten gold. The voice was both everywhere and inside her head. "You came back." Sheila swallowed hard. "You're the heart. I am the mountain. I am what was buried, what was stolen, what you disturbed. Then take it back," she said, tears welling. "I don't want your gold." "I never did. You returned what you could," the being said, its light pulsing. "But balance is not restored. What do you mean?" The gold under her feet rippled like water, revealing flashes of miners, ghosts trapped beneath the earth, screaming silently. The greed of man feeds us still. The gold calls. "They come. You mean the prospectors?" "Yes, and others will follow." Sheila clenched her fists. "Then what do you want me to do?" The being stepped closer, its golden light bathing her face. "End the call." Sheila blinked. "How?" "By giving the heart a new keeper." Her stomach dropped. "You mean me?" "Only one who has resisted the gold can silence it. Only one who has lost everything can be trusted to hold it." She shook her head. "I can't." But the mountain rumbled beneath her. Ranger barked once, his golden form glowing brighter. Sheila fell to her knees. The heat, the sound, the weight, it was too much. And then she heard him, Rayner's ghostly voice again, whispering softly. It always needed a guardian. She looked down at Ranger's light, then up at the glowing being. "I'll do it," she said. "But he stays with me." The golden being nodded slowly. "Then the mountain shall sleep once more." The cave exploded in golden light. From the town below, the ridge shone like a sunrise, brilliant, silent, then fading into calm. When it cleared, the cave was sealed again. No gold, no tunnels, no shimmer. Just stone, and somewhere within that stone, deep and peaceful, two faint lights pulsed in rhythm, one human, one canine. 10 years passed. The town of Silverpine changed, as all places do. The roads were smoother, the gas station gleamed with LED lights, and the old diner became a tourist cafe with gold leaf lattes and souvenir mugs shaped like pickaxes. But the mountain, that never changed. Locals still avoided the ridge after dark. Hunters said their dogs refused to go near it. Campers told stories of golden mist that rolled down into the trees at midnight. And always they spoke of her, the mountain woman. "She's still up there," the old folks whispered, "guarding the gold that ain't gold no more." At the base of the mountain, a young geologist named Mara Linton parked her jeep and pulled out a battered notebook. She was 28, with cropped dark hair and the restless energy of someone who'd rather be chasing storms than sitting in an office. Her professor had called her obsession foolish. folklore, but she couldn't shake it. The legend of the haunted mine, the woman who vanished, the dog made of light. Something about it felt true. She glanced at her dog, a shepherd mix named Jasper, and smiled. "Ready to meet a ghost, buddy?" Jasper wagged once, but his ears stayed low. He was uneasy. They began the hike at dawn. The trail wound steeply upward, lined with moss and fallen pines. The air grew colder with each step, though it was midsummer. Mara followed her notes, coordinates from old survey maps and reports from the failed excavation 10 years before. Most people said the site was lost. Landslides had buried the tunnels, and the government had sealed the area off after unexplained seismic activity. But Mara's gut told her otherwise. By noon, she reached the ridge, and there it was, a faint arch of stone, half swallowed by roots and earth. The same arch Sheila had once walked through. Mara brushed away the dirt with her gloves. Strange symbols gleamed faintly beneath the dust. "Just geology, right?" she murmured. "No magic here." The rock pulsed. Jasper whimpered. Mara froze. Then the pulse faded, leaving silence and a faint scent of rain and pine sap. She camped by the ridge that night, watching the stars burn above the peaks. Her recorder sat by the fire, documenting everything. Temperature drop of 11 degrees. Magnetic fluctuations. Strange luminescence under stone surface. At midnight the wind shifted. She heard a dog bark. Jasper lifted his head, growling low. The bark came again, distant, echoing. Mara frowned. Another camper? But there was no one for miles. Then she saw it, a faint glow moving between the trees, golden soft, a shape a dog's. "Shape!" Jasper whimpered and backed up. Mara grabbed her flashlight and followed the glow. It led her to a clearing, small, moonlit, quiet except for the whisper of pines. The golden dog stopped and turned toward her. Mara's breath caught. It wasn't solid. It shimmered like sunlight through smoke. Its eyes glowed bright and kind. "Ranger," she whispered, the name coming to her without knowing why. The golden dog tilted its head, then looked toward the ridge. Mara followed its gaze to the archway. It glowed now, symbols burning like tiny stars. The dog barked once, a sound that felt like a heartbeat, then vanished. Mara swallowed hard. Okay, not geology. She spent the next morning studying the arch, taking samples, running tests, writing pages of notes. But her data made no sense. The readings fluctuated wildly, and her compass spun in circles. By afternoon, she stopped pretending this was a scientific trip. She sat by the stone and said aloud, "I know you're here, whoever you are. I think you want me to see something." The ground shivered softly beneath her hand. Then a voice, soft, carried on the wind. "You came to wake it again?" Mara jumped, scanning the forest. "Who's there?" Silence. Then from the air itself, "You should not have come." The voice was female, calm, strong. Mara's pulse hammered. "Are you Sheila Johnson?" The air shimmered and a figure appeared, faint, woven of light and mist. "Yes," it said. "I am the keeper." Mara stared. "You're real." The spirit smiled faintly. "Real enough, but not as you are. I belong to the mountain now." Jasper barked once, and Ranger's glowing shape appeared beside the spirit, tail wagging. Sheila reached down to stroke him, and he never left. Mara took a hesitant step forward. "I came because I wanted to understand. People said the gold cursed this place. I wanted to prove them wrong." Sheila's voice softened. "The gold isn't cursed, child. It's alive, part of the earth's heart. Man tried to rip it out and it bled. That's all a curse ever is, a wound that refuses to heal." Mara looked down. "Can it be healed?" Sheila studied her for a long moment. "Maybe, if someone learns to listen." Then the spirit reached out a hand, not solid but warm. The moment Mara touched it, visions flooded her mind. The tunnels, the miners, the collapse. The gold river flowing through stone, Sheila's sacrifice, the sealing of the heart. When she gasped and pulled back, her eyes shimmered faintly with gold. "What did you do to me?" Sheila smiled sadly. "I showed you what you came to find, the truth." And now you carry it. That night Mara dreamed of the mountain breathing. She saw veins of gold pulsing beneath her feet, the spirit of Ranger standing guard, and the faint echo of Sheila's voice whispering, "The heart is safe, for now." When she awoke, her tent was gone, no wind, no storm, just gone, as if it had never existed. The stone arch lay silent again. The glow faded. Jasper stood beside her, tail low, staring at the ridge. Something inside Mara told her she'd been chosen, not by science, not by fate, but by something older. She packed her things, took one last look at the mountain and whispered, "I'll keep your secret." The wind answered softly, "Then the mountain will keep you." The years rolled by, as gently and relentlessly as the mountain fog. Mara Linton never returned to her city job. After that night on Silverpine Ridge, she built a small cabin halfway up the trail. Wood walls, solar panels, and a wide porch facing the valley. To outsiders, she was just another reclusive mountain woman. But to the few who truly looked, she was something else. The quiet shimmer in her eyes, the way animals followed her, the warmth of the ground beneath her steps, all of it marked her as the new keeper. The mountain had chosen her. It had been 15 years since Sheila's disappearance. Most people in town had forgotten her name or folded her into folklore. Tourists spoke of the haunted gold mine of Silverpine, taking photos by warning signs and leaving coins as offerings to the ghost of the woman miner. But every full moon, Mara climbed to the old ridge and sat beside the collapsed entrance. Ranger's glow still lingered there, faint as starlight, and sometimes she could hear a soft bark echo through the trees. She always brought Jasper with her. He'd grown old now, muzzle grey, eyes gentle. But when they reached the ridge, he always stood straighter, like he knew another dog was watching. One night, as the mist thickened and the crickets fell silent, Mara spoke aloud to the air, "Sheila, if you can hear me, I've done what you asked. No one's touched the gold since. The heart is quiet." The wind sighed through the pines. Then a faint whisper, "For now." That, "for now," became prophecy. By the following spring, Silverpine Ridge was crawling with new investors. Not gold miners this time, but developers. They wanted to build a luxury resort, glass chalets, a scenic railway, even an authentic gold mine experience for tourists. Mara attended the first town meeting, her jaw tight, hands shaking. "This mountain isn't for sale," she said. The project manager, a slick man in a grey suit named Hal Penmore, smiled politely. "We're not taking it apart, Miss Linton. We're celebrating it. Heritage tourism, local jobs. The economy will thrive, it will bleed," she said quietly. "You have no idea what you're touching," Penmore chuckled. "Spoken like a true ghost believer. Don't worry, we'll leave your cabin alone. You can even be our guide if you like." The laughter in the room stung, but Mara said nothing more. She only whispered to herself as she left, "They're waking it again." That night, Mara couldn't sleep. The ridge glowed faintly, as it had years ago. When she stepped outside, she saw golden light moving through the trees, slow, pulsing, alive. "Not again," she whispered. Jasper whined softly, pressing against her leg. The air vibrated, and from the mist came a familiar voice. "Mara." Sheila's spirit emerged from the trees, Ranger beside her, tail wagging like firelight. "Sheila, the seal weakens," Sheila said. "The greed of man has no patience. They will tear open what should never be disturbed." "What can I do?" Mara asked. Sheila looked toward the ridge, the same as I did, but not with fire this time. "With choice." "Choice?" The spirit smiled faintly. "You'll know when it comes." Then both she and Ranger faded, leaving only the echo of their steps in the snow. The developers began drilling a week later. Machines thundered through the forest, carving new access roads, splitting stone. The ground trembled more each day. Animals fled. Birds vanished. And every night, Mara saw more of the golden mist spilling down the slopes. On the 8th day, she hiked up to the construction site. The workers stopped when she appeared, a solitary woman in a weathered coat. Her dog at her side, eyes bright with something that didn't look quite human. "Shut it down," she said. Penmore scoffed. Lady, you don't get to make demands. Mara's gaze drifted to the ridge. Then listen, the earth rumbled, the air filled with a low, metallic hum, like 1,000 coins shaking in unison. The drill froze mid-motion, and from the rock face, golden light erupted, pouring like liquid fire, wrapping the machines in shimmering tendrils. The men screamed, running back. Penmore fell to his knees, staring as the gold crawled toward him. Mara stepped forward, palms out. Stop! They don't understand! The light paused. The mountain listened. Then for the first time in years she spoke to it directly, the same way Sheila had taught her in dreams. It's enough. I'll stay. Let them go. The gold shivered, then retreated into the earth like breath drawn inward. Silence fell. Penmore scrambled to his feet, pale as ash. What the hell was that? The mountain's heart, Mara said softly. And it's still beating. Within days, the project collapsed. Investors withdrew. Penmore quit. The government declared the ridge a protected zone due to unexplained geological instability. No one argued. Mara moved her cabin closer to the ridge and lived there alone, tending the land, writing her notes in journals that no one ever read. She grew older, slower, but her eyes always held that faint shimmer of gold. Every now and then, hikers would spot her through the mist. A solitary woman with a dog, walking the line between forest and fog. Some said her dog glowed faintly in moonlight. Others swore her footprints shimmered like sunlight on water. No one ever found her cabin. 30 years later, a young ranger hiking the ridge found a journal half buried in roots. Its pages were filled with sketches of tunnels, maps of golden veins, and notes written in a looping hand. The gold was never a curse. It was the mountain's pulse, and the heart only beats when we forget to listen. On the last page, in faded ink, it read, "If you hear the whisper, don't fear it. It's only the mountain breathing. Keep it alive." Emil, the ranger, looked up at the ridge. A golden mist drifted through the trees, and somewhere faintly a dog barked. He smiled, tucked the journal under his arm, and whispered, "Guess the legend was real after all." Far above, through the fog, a woman's figure watched, calm, proud, and shining faintly gold, the last mountain woman, the final keeper, and beside her, 2 glowing dogs stood guard as dawn broke over Silverpine Ridge. "Ranger!" The scratching came again, followed by a low, familiar whine. She ran to the door and flung it open, and froze. There was nothing there, only the mist curling off the mountain. But in the mud just outside the porch steps were paw prints, fresh. Sheila stumbled backward, clutching the doorframe. No, it can't be." The prints led toward the woods, glowing faintly gold in the dark. By morning, Sheila was gone. She left her cabin just before dawn, following the tracks. Her pack was light: rope, flashlight, journal, a small pistol. Ranger's collar hung from her belt. The prints wound through the pine forest, across dry creek beds and through tall grass, until they reached a narrow ravine she hadn't seen before. The air was cold there, unnaturally cold. She crouched near the edge. Below, half hidden by fallen branches, was a small cave opening. It glowed faintly. Sheila's heart pounded. No way! She descended carefully, each footstep deliberate. The closer she got, the more she could hear it. The faint hum she'd thought she'd silenced forever. It wasn't gone. It had moved. She ducked into the cave, flashlight cutting through the shadows. The gold veins ran through the walls like veins of fire under glass. And then she saw him. At least, she thought she did. A dog-shaped silhouette stood deeper in the tunnel, its eyes glowing softly gold. "Ranger?" It wagged its tail once, almost shyly. Tears blurred her vision. "You're alive." But when she stepped forward, the dog turned and vanished into the wall. The gold shimmered like water where it had been. She pressed her hand against the spot, and it sank through. The world on the other side wasn't the mountain she knew. It was a cavern, vast and shimmering, stretching beyond sight. Rivers of gold ran through stone like molten blood, and faint shapes moved within the light. Miners, spirits, shadows. Sheila gasped. "The heart!" The ghostly voice of Raina echoed faintly. You sealed the wound, but not the soul. The mountain keeps what it loves. She turned, eyes searching. Ranger! The golden dog appeared again, padding toward her from the far end of the cavern. But this time, when she reached out, her hand didn't pass through him. She felt warmth, fur, breath, life. Her knees buckled. Oh God, Ranger, you're back. But even as she embraced him, she could see it, veins of gold running under his fur, pulsing softly. He was not fully alive, not fully gone. Raina's voice murmured again. You took the heart from the earth. Now the earth takes a heart in return, Sheila whispered. What do you want me to do? The cavern pulsed. The golden veins glowed brighter. Then, from deep below, she heard it, the faint clinking of metal, coins, chains, a sound like wealth whispering her name. Ranger growled softly, ears flattening. The whispering grew louder. 5 million in gold. Yours if you stay. Sheila's flashlight flickered. Her pulse thundered. She looked down and saw it. A narrow tunnel, newly formed, leading deeper still. Gold dust drifted out of it like breath. By the time she climbed out of the ravine, night had fallen again. Her pack was heavier now, filled with nuggets. Raw and unrefined, she walked back to the truck in silence, her boots crunching over pine needles. When she reached the driver's seat, she hesitated, then looked back toward the glowing cave. Ranger stood beside her, eyes faintly luminescent. Sheila whispered, We'll make it right. Whatever it takes. The dog tilted his head. Sheila started the engine. As they drove down the mountain, the radio crackled to life, though it had been dead for years. A man's voice whispered through the static, The gold never sleeps. Sheila! The engine sputtered, and in her rearview mirror she saw it. The mountain pulsed once. Golden light flickering beneath the earth. It wasn't done with her. Not yet. The town of Silverpine returned to its uneasy quiet, but Sheila Johnson couldn't rest. It had been 3 nights since she followed Ranger's glowing tracks into the ravine. 3 nights since she'd seen the rivers of living gold and brought a sack of it back down from the mountain. She'd buried most of it behind her cabin, hidden under loose soil and a tarp, but even underground she could still feel it. When the wind blew from the north, it carried a faint metallic hum. When she closed her eyes, she could hear the whispering again. 5 million in gold. Yours if you stay? Ranger would growl softly every time she drifted too close to the back door where the gold was buried. The glow under his fur had faded, but sometimes, in moonlight, she could still see it, a heartbeat of light under his ribs. Don't worry, boy, she whispered, scratching behind his ears. I'm not touching it again. But the gold didn't care about promises. On the 4th morning, Sheila drove down to town for supplies. At the general store, people still whispered when she walked in. Some nodded respectfully. Others looked away, uneasy. Morning, Miss Johnson, Hank said, stacking crates of flour behind the counter. You're looking better. Sheila gave a thin smile. Trying to get back to normal. Normal ain't what it used to be, Hank muttered. You seen the ridge lately? Stream water's got gold flecks in it. Fish are dying. Ground's hot to the touch, she froze. It's spreading again? He shrugged. Not sure. Could just be runoff, but he hesitated, glancing toward the door. Couple of prospectors came by last night. Said they saw light in the trees near your place. Sheila felt the air go cold. Light? Gold light. She left her groceries and drove home fast. By the time she reached the cabin, dusk had fallen. The sky was violet, the trees black silhouettes. As she climbed out of the truck, Ranger stiffened, ears high, growling low in his throat. She followed his gaze. At the tree line, faint golden shapes flickered between the trunks, moving, pulsing, drifting like ghosts. She grabbed the flashlight from her belt and flicked it on. The beam cut across the clearing, and she saw them clearly this time. Men, or what had once been men, their skin shimmered like gold leaf, cracked and glowing from within. Their eyes burned like molten coins, and when they turned their heads toward her, she recognized them, the miners from Rayna's journal. Sheila stumbled backward, heart hammering. No, I sealed the mine. You can't be here! The first of them spoke, voice deep and echoing like stone grinding on metal. You open the heart. You carry its hunger, Ranger barked, stepping between her and the figures. What do you want? Sheila shouted. Another spoke. Return what you took, or the mountain will reclaim it in blood. And then, just like that, the figures vanished. The clearing went silent. Sheila stood frozen, her flashlight trembling in her hand. She turned slowly toward the back of the cabin, where the buried gold lay. The soil was glowing faintly. She whispered, "Oh no." She spent the rest of the night digging. By the time the moon reached its peak, she'd uncovered the top, and what she saw made her stomach turn. The gold wasn't still. It pulsed. Each nugget throbbed faintly like a heart. The soil around it steamed, and the air reeked of sulfur. Ranger growled, his eyes flicking between her and the pit. "I'm going to end this," she muttered. "All of it." She fetched the old dynamite Hank had given her and began loading it into the pit. But when she struck a match, the flame sputtered out. The air was too thick, too charged. She heard it again at the whisper, "Stay. It's yours." 5 million in gold. Enough to start again. Her hands trembled. The whisper turned smoother, softer, familiar. It was her own voice now. "You lost everything once, Sheila. Your husband. Your home. You can't lose again." Tears filled her eyes. "Stop it! You deserve this!" She pressed her hands to her ears. "Stop!" Ranger barked, snapping her back to herself. The dynamite fuse flickered, and before she could think, she threw it into the pit. The explosion shook the clearing, sending dirt and light flying. A wave of heat knocked her to the ground. When the smoke cleared, the hole was gone, sealed over by blackened rock. The light had vanished. Sheila lay on her back, gasping, stars wheeling above her. Ranger limped to her side, licking her face. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." But as she reached to hug him, her hand brushed his collar, and it burned her skin. She jerked back with a cry. The collar's tag glowed gold again, brighter than ever. Ranger whined, stepping back. His eyes flickered, gold, then brown, then gold again. Sheila's stomach turned cold. "Oh God, what's happening to you?" Ranger barked once, sharp, and ran toward the woods. "Ranger, come back!" But he was gone, swallowed by the trees and the whispering dark. For 3 days, Sheila searched the forest. She found no tracks, no fur, nothing but faint golden dust where he'd stood last. She barely ate, barely slept. The townspeople stopped asking questions. They knew she'd gone half feral up there, chasing something the mountain had already claimed. On the 4th night, a knock came at her cabin door. She opened it to find Mrs. Dawes. Clutching a newspaper, "Sheila," she said quietly, "you need to see this." The front-page headline read, "Gold Rush returns to Silverpine Ridge. Survey team finds 5 molars in untapped veins." Sheila's heart stopped. "No," she whispered.